Welcome, and Your Excellencies, colleagues, members of the Australian diplomatic community, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you all here on behalf of the Australian National Centre for Latin American Studies and the ANU, and also the school in which we are, which is the School of Politics and International Relations, for this little reception in honour of the Embassy and the Government of Ecuador and their donation of books to the ANU. I'd like to say a few things about my own perspective on this donation and on Ecuador in particular. Actually, I visited Ecuador for the first time just late last year for a couple of weeks, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But Ecuador is in many ways a country that's probably not spoken very much about in Australia. It's probably a country with a relatively low profile in Australia. But although it's a small country of about 15 million people or so, it has some extraordinary things about it that make it quite a remarkable country. It's said to be the most biodiverse country on Earth, the largest number of species per hectare of anywhere on Earth. Two of its three major cities are World Heritage Sites. The capital, Quito, is said to have the best preserved colonial centre in the Americas. It has something like 15% of the world's bird species. It's an important country in all sorts of ways for that reason. And for my interest particularly, it's important as well because alongside all of that natural beauty and the importance of its natural environment, not only to Ecuador and to the region, but to the world, indeed, it also is a country that's very heavily dependent on resource extraction. In fact, very heavily dependent on the extraction of oil. And the tension between those two things makes it, for someone like me, a very interesting place to study. And the kinds of policies that might be introduced to preserve the natural environment while encouraging some kind of development to take place makes it an extraordinary place. And indeed, the current government has proposed an absolutely unique, as far as I know, a unique proposal to both preserve the environment and to allow some development to take place at the same time, the Yasuni Itete initiative, which I'll talk about in a moment, that hopefully we have a team here which will be studying from Ecuador. So it's very appropriate, I think, that we're having this reception, not just to thank the government and the Embassy of Ecuador for their donation of books to the library, but also because we're going to be having increasingly close ties with the embassy here in Australia and with the government in Ecuador, and more interest in Ecuador. We have a team here at the ANU of 4 people, myself, Dr. Phil Gibbons from the Fenner School of the Environment and Society, Doreen Montag, who's an anthropologist, Dr. Doreen Montag and Andrew McIntosh from the College of Law, in association with the Institute of Higher Studies, National Institute of Higher Studies in Ecuador, to carry out a major research project in the near future. Also, a bit later on in the year, we will be proud to present an exclusively Ecuadorian film festival here at the ANU, which you, of course, will be invited to. So we'll be deepening our involvement with Ecuador, and so this donation of books is very important in increasing that. It's very important to us as well. What we're doing in terms of Latin American studies is backed up by the library. And I must say that the library here, the ANU librarian, Roxanne Missingham, also Diane Humphreys and Helena Zobek have been extremely helpful in building up, almost from scratch, significant resources in the library on Latin America. In the last 12 months or so, we've secured a major internal grant of $35,000 to begin the process of building up a recent up-to-date collection on Latin America. And by the end of the spending of that money and other monies, we'll have had something like 1,500 new titles on Latin America come in to the library. In addition to, and I'm glad that the Ambassador of Uruguay is here, in addition to the purchase of a private collection on Uruguay, which must give us the best collection on Uruguay, certainly anywhere in Australia and probably in many other parts as well. And we've also bought just recently a private collection of 1,700 volumes, more broadly on Latin America, but particularly concentrated on Mexico. So by the end of this process, we'll have added about 4,000 volumes, if my maths is correct, to the library on Latin America. And that's very important for us in backing up Our teaching program, as many of you know, we've begun a Bachelor of Latin American Studies this year, in a small way, which will build up over the years, and also in attracting postgraduates and researchers to this place to study Latin America. It's all part of making what we're trying to do a real centre of excellence. So I'd begin by certainly thanking the Ambassador of Ecuador, Mr. Raul Gencatina, who's been a great supporter of ANCLAS ever since he's been here in Australia. He's been a regular attender at all sorts of the many ANCLAS events that we've held in the evening, during the day and so on, and a terrific backup for ANCLAS in those years that he's been here, and I'm sure will continue to be so in the future. And also to thank the library for their work in supporting the work of ANCLAS over the last year or so in particular. And on that note, I'd like to welcome Roxanne Missingham, the ANU librarian, to say a few words about the donation as well. Thanks, Roxanne.
It's a great privilege to be here. Thank you, John, and thank you, Ambassador, for providing us with this opportunity. It is great to have the Centre for Latin American Studies doing wonderful work, both in teaching and learning and also in research. And a great institution depends upon great resources being available to them. And I think the Centre has made an extraordinary commitment to make those resources available in partnership with the library and partnership with donors that is to the benefit of all current students and researchers, and is also available to the world. We provide copies of records of material that are in our collection to the National Library's Trove service, so it's part of a national resource discovery service that promotes ANU as a centre, a dynamic centre of studies in Latin America, which is one of the most interesting areas of development. John has talked to you about that intersection of politics, of literature, of environment, of industry, and it is an extraordinary rich and diverse area. Borges said, "I have always imagined that paradise will be some kind of library." And it is wonderful for us to be able to take this contribution, to be able to increase our little bit of paradise for all of the researchers and scholars here, but also for the world, as I've said. And I hadn't realised until after I had the great fortune to meet the Ambassador how rich the literary heritage of Ecuador is, and the extraordinarily high rate of literacy. In this National Year of Reading, Australia should not be proud that we have over 8 million people who are not literate. Ecuador is not in that situation. They have a fundamental commitment to literacy, which is inspiring, I think. The literature is just marvellous. I have only read the English language translations of some of them, but it represents an extraordinary understanding of people in the landscape, of political change, of industry, of the environment, and it is inspiring literature. Ecuador has a marvellous heritage of poetry as well, and we have a very small set of the material that has been donated to us on the little table at the back. We will be progressively adding them to the collection, but we're very, very proud to be able to add such a substantive collection to ANU to make it available to everyone. One of the most interesting things to me as well in looking at the collection is what a wonderful commitment of the country to a living heritage that these resources are in print and available to be purchased or to be donated. Whereas in Australia we have so many books that are no longer in print and are very hard to access. It is a real testament to Ecuador's commitment to literature and in fact to the literary landscape. Before I pass on to the Ambassador, I'd just like to say how grateful I am that you are all here to be able to experience the growth in this area and the continued growth of the centre, which is really one that is, I think, something that the nation should be proud of, not just ANU. And we absolutely have a strong commitment to working with the centre to continue the growth of excellence in this area. So thank you very much and welcome, Ambassador.
Thank you, Roxanne. One of the things I think is a great advantage of being here at the ANU is that it is located in Canberra. And the fact that it's located in Canberra gives us a good working relationship, the possibility of a good working relationship with the Latin American missions in Australia. And I'm delighted to see and to recognise that ambassadors have taken time out of their very busy schedule to come here for this reception today. And I recognise in particular the ambassadors from Uruguay, Brazil, Chile, Argentina and Mexico, as well as the ambassador of Ecuador, and thank them for their time and coming here today. I'd like to introduce Mr. Raul Gangatena, ambassador of Ecuador, to respond.
Thank you very much. I'm extremely happy to be here. I was talking to some of the attendants and I was enjoying every one of their personalities. I was also sympathetic with some child labor that has been hired and is underpaid. It happened that yesterday, or the day before, that we came with my son, which is a bit taller. He's 186 already, and he was pushing the trolley that Roxanne and I were taken to the library, and Roxanne was telling me, yeah, there was some other labor a bit underpaid some days before. But that's the human touch of this meeting. I appreciate very much, and I thank you very much, John, for your wonderful words for my country, for my people. And I have to confess that a piece of the paradise was taken away from me, because these books were in a little place just besides my office. And I used to touch them and enjoy them and look at them again and again, and taking them to read one after the other. And sometime I was reading for the third time some of those. And there was especially some that were, I was very sorry to take away from us, because it's something that has not been reprinted since 1960, which is a collection of what's called the minimum of the Ecuadorian library, with books that have been written. Well, the most important, I would say, is a book written by a Jesuit at the end of the 18th century, when they were expelled by the King of Spain. They were expelled from the colonies, and all of a sudden they were unemployed, and they have some free time. And this priest, Juan de Velasco, wrote the first comprehensive history of Ecuador, and it's all in that part. And it's going to be valuable for students here. And it seems that as a historian, modern criticisms had been made saying that he was a bit a creator of legends. But in fact, history, yes, it's facts, but it's also the evolution of the human beings and human groups that might become a legend. And historian has to describe the fact, the narrative of the facts. Yeah. But anyhow, they're good pieces. And I'm very happy, and I have to tell you the story. How is it that we decided to make these donations? We were very appreciative of the Latin American studies here. We were not mistaken, and the presence of the heads of mission of the Latin American nations here show how much the group of Latin American ambassadors and missions appreciate Latin American studies. But there was some additional piece missing, because we didn't want the books to be lost somehow. And all of a sudden, one day, I was in the Albert Hall for some of the meetings of the Diplomatic Corps, and a very nice lady was walking together with me to the parking lot. And we met, and she happened to be the librarian of ANU since the day before that one. And we went to the parking lot, but I said, that's the piece that was missing, the librarian. Because she is going to take care of this piece of paradise that she's going to strip from us. But she's going to channel paradise to the ones who need most. So it was the perfect occasion to decide on making the donation. And I'm extremely happy to be here for that. And there's a part of that group of books, there's going to be 2 or 3 books that are missing, but are on their way. Here is a student of Ecuador who recently came here. She is Vania Preciado, the daughter of a very fine poet of our country, Antonio Preciado. And when I learned that she was here studying, and we had a cup of coffee, and I said to her, well, we need books of Antonio Preciado here. And she asked her mother to send, but the mail has been a bit slow, but they are on their way. As soon as they arrive, she will go to the library and give those books to you. But that's the very fine contemporary poet of our country, that people of the Spanish language, I appreciate very much that, and I appreciate very much the comment of the professor, head of the School of Languages, telling us that the Spanish language is on the rise, and a very sharp rise. So they're going to need books, and we're very happy to have books. And for all trades of Ecuador, we have from indigenous authors, from Afro-Ecuadorian descendants, from the mix of the majority of us are mestizos. And there's one book that I was telling Roxanne that I was especially sorry, because it's a picture book of pictures taken by an American who happened to be going again and again to Ecuador since 1944. And so a very fine photographer, and every one of those photographs are a piece of art, each one. But it's a historic document, because history in the past was just mentions of oral tradition, or documents, or facts that were in stone or in print or whatever. But recently, historians have, at the same time that they have the facts and they have the documents, they have photographs. And that's very recent in terms of history. You know how the people, for example, the indigenous people in Ecuador, how the clothing was in 1945 and how is it now. And there's also the movies and the evolution of human beings and human groups and how they evolved. And the historian now is able to, yeah, that's a fact, that's the process, and he can document the process. He can tell the story of the process. But of course, it's always necessary to have the fiction writer, the fiction, the invention and reinvention of reality that the literary, the novelists and the poets make every time. I know that with the princess and my wonderful colleagues here, we may have some other donations made to the library of the Australian National University, because it's usual that all of our countries like to have books sent and donated. And for this growing Spanish speaking group, we're going to need more and more materials. Well, we're very happy that we have the Ecuadorian materials already here, well taken care of, and going for sure to the best people to use them. So thank you for that. We appreciate that we are here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. We've taken a few moments actually using the child labour that was mentioned before to outline a few of the meetings that we've done over the last few years, and this is actually a very small selection of what we've done over the last 2-3 years, really. But what's interesting about those meetings, and we've got some cycling through here as well, is that the vast majority of them have been done with some kind of support from Latin American mission or missions in Australia. It would have been very, very difficult to carry out this and to do this intensity, I suppose, of things around political, historical, cultural, and other forms of interaction with Latin America without the support of the Latin American mission. So that's very, very important. Once again, let me add my thanks to Ecuador and to the Ambassador for this donation. And please stay around and take advantage of the cheap labour. And please don't tell my union about this. Thanks again for coming.